witness, fellas. Look here.
Stand by.
One for C-Lab, two for Troy Eagle, three for Wolverine to round out the trio in this episode. Everybody dies.
Broadcasting live from inside the Power Band, this is The Law. In this episode, everybody dies. I'm your host, the Wolverine, along with my intrepid companions, Jarhigo.
Greetings.
And C-Lab forever.
And salutations.
Enthusiastic as always. Gentlemen, welcome to the podcast, folks.
Can I change mine to Yew-cheen, chef-faw?
Yo, God, yeah. Well, you just did it right there. Yew-cheen, chef-faw. Welcome to the podcast, folks. This week we are talking about the 1997 classic science fiction film by Andrew Niccol, Gattaca, starring Ethan Hawke, Uma Thurman, Jude Law, and a whole host of other wonderful and talented actors. Let's start the show.
And Cabbie from Escape from New York.
And Cabbie from Escape from New York. High level. Chad.
This was always a really good movie in my memory, and it held up quite well.
Mm.
It's kind of like the most terrifying dystopia, in a way. It's more scary than a 1984 or a, Terminator, fucking Rise of the Machines kind of sci-fi plot. It's just such a terrifying premise. And I find myself torn, but I also find myself terrified. And I enjoyed it.
Excellent. Short, sweet. Let's move it over to Jarhigo.
Hated it.
Hated it.
Hated it.
No, I didn't hate it. My appetite for dystopia is not very large, but it is definitely science fiction. It's the classic definition of science fiction, but I'm curious about the world of Gattaca outside of the eugenics scheme, but the space exploration side in getting into rockets in double-breasted 40s suits.
Pretty sweet.
With lots of hair gel and stuff and zipping around the solar system. I think that's very interesting. And this little story is sort of like I think of it as like a short story in that universe, that sort of revolves around the periphery of all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a great film. It's got a great cast. It's very well acted. It's beautifully shot. It's very well put together, but it's, a little on the slow side, and I really don't know how to categorize it. I enjoyed it, and I think it's a great movie, but at the same time, part of me feels like it's just not very interesting. Does that make sense?
It does.
No, it doesn't, but...
It's a psychodrama, like maybe not even a psychodrama, but somewhere between like a drama and a psychodrama. I mean, this is one of my all-time favorites. I get what you're saying. I think it is definitely not a typical science fiction film. I mean, there are no pew-pew lasers, none of that. And you're right, in the sense of the classic definition of science fiction, it's great. It's talking about social issues in a futuristic backdrop. And it keeps being relevant because racism is always relevant, and it keeps changing. And I love that about it. And I love the aesthetic of the film. It's
your vibe, totally, man.
Yeah, and it's very well polished and well appointed. There's a lot of detail went into this movie, and I think it helps to make it what it was. Not only that, the story is well written, and it's very well acted, obviously, as well. A really good cast, too. So I hear what you're saying, Ben, no doubt. If you're looking for action, this is not the movie for sci-fi. It's methodical. It moves at a slow, steady pace, and but the story is great. I absolutely love it. I've seen this movie close to 100 times. It's so good.
It had been a while, but I definitely hear what you're saying, Benny. I think I hadn't considered it from that vantage point, but I feel like if you were to show this to somebody who had not seen it before, now, they probably would feel very similarly, probably because a lot of this ground has been covered in the 25 years since the movie came out, or 20 years or whatever.
No doubt.
I heard a clever comparison. Well, I heard something clever on YouTube where they said it was like a proto Black Mirror episode, which I thought was kind of an interesting way to view it. Because it kind of has that vibe, but it's a feature length, so.
I think I agree with you, and I liked your dystopia comment, Ben. I mean, I think I'm definitely sort of getting a little dystopia fatigue.
Now that we live in one.
Well, yeah, that too. Exactly. But, this movie clearly was an influence and paved the way for a lot of the dystopian stuff that we've seen in the last 20 years. I mean, this coming out in 97, that was 25 years ago. So I think you're right, Chad. To your point, it's like we've seen a lot of this stuff in this movie repeated, but it probably came from this movie, or this movie was one of the earlier progenitors of some of those ideas. You know what I mean?
And it pulls from some classics, like aesthetically it has something of a Fahrenheit 451 vibe, like the retrofuturism stuff. So I found myself much more drawn to the story than maybe the desire for a fast mover. If a story's good enough for me, like I'm cool with slower movies. I'm not suggesting that, you hate slow movies, Benny, but in this particular case, maybe in this particular mood, it was not quite there.
No, I have nothing against slow movies, but I don't typically watch them again.
Yeah, that's fair.
If it felt slow to me the first time, it feels glacially slow to me the second time.
Sure.
I don't think that, for me, this is, I don't know, I'm with Chad. The story's so good that, and it's immersive. You get drawn in and you're invested in the world. So, watching it again doesn't hold any problem for me. It doesn't slow down as I go. In fact, I actually thought...
Yeah, it's a good story, but I was really riveted the first time I watched it because the entire time I was, freaking out thinking he was going to get busted, like it really has that... It keeps you, on sort of on the edge of your seat, even though it's slow paced on your first watch because you're invested in a character and you want to see him succeed. But, there's just all this, like the worst possible things keep sort of happening. And you're constantly, it's a, similar thing to like watching Dexter,
Yeah.
It's like once you start rooting for Dexter, you're just like, you're like, oh, fuck, he's going to get caught. Oh, fuck, he's going to get caught.
Oh, my God.
So,
and he comes so close so many times, just like in this.
So many times, yeah. So, and kind of similar to Dexter by like the end of it, I was like, okay, like seriously, he hasn't been caught yet?
Yeah, right.
So like on my third watching of this movie, I'm like, okay, he hasn't been caught, I don't know. So just knowing what's going to happen sort of makes me like less inclined to want to go for the journey. It is a great story. It's just...
Well, that's a really good point, man, because this has come up more and more as we've gone through this show and as we creep slower towards 100 episodes is the difference now versus when we first saw it. And this movie, I hadn't actually thought of that because I like this movie so much. And this is like a once a year watch at least for me. And you're right. Like I was just remembering my feelings as I watched it the first time. And it's like great tension, really anxiety inducing, wondering if he's going to get caught. How is he going to pull off the next thing and the next thing as they go through the investigation in particular, and Alan Arkin keeps suggesting, different things that are more invasive and intrusive in terms of, testing to see if they can find this invalid, So, yeah, a lot of anxiety and all of that sort of thing and just like kind of rooting for him. And, I forgot what that was like when I saw it the first time. It was so riveting,
It had been a good 10, 15 years since I've seen it. So I remembered the like broad strokes of it and I remembered the ending and stuff. So there weren't any surprises, but it was kind of semi-fresh for me.
Yeah, that's good.
Which helps, like, I don't know. I was just like, oh yeah, you just kind of recall stuff and it remains, delightful as opposed to monotonous. It's sometimes just like I don't know, like you said, sometimes watching movies that I have a fondness for. Similar to your previous comment, I think in one of the Hyperion episodes, Benny, where you like tend to not revisit some of your favorites because you don't want it to kind of become lesser. as a result of revisiting it. I saw.
And by that, you mean hate it?
Well, not necessarily, but like I just have that fear that's like my really amazing memory of it will be brought back down to reality, and it's like, oh, I kind of wish I just kept on to that really great memory, that kind of thing. Rose-colored glasses and stuff.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, not to digress too far, but I was literally thinking about listening to the audiobooks of Hyperion yesterday, and I was like, yeah.
You got nauseous?
Fucking way. Yeah, I did. I did. I was like, that's not going to happen for a long time. And
Yeah.
I almost started crying.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
But the nausea overpowered my tears.
That's it.
Just to clarify, my opinion of the movie hasn't really changed. It's just my appetite to watch it knowing what's already,
Yeah.
Sometimes that just happens.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Some movies, once you know what how things pan out, it's not as fun to watch again. I mean,
Sure.
any movie is not as fun to watch again, I don't think. But, whatever. Scratch it.
Unless you're doing a study or
No,
something.
no. It's a good thought, man. You're right. I mean, it's a good talking point in general. It's like, go ahead, Chad.
I often get asked by people, like, they are surprised when they hear that I read books more than once or watch movies more than once. And I'm baffled for the opposite reason. I'm like, you only watch it once or read it once? Like,
Well, that's what I think.
I don't know. It's just different varieties, I guess.
I mean, I like the thought of, like Ben just said, like, once you watch it the first time, it's going to be different.
Yeah. It's like The Sixth Sense or something. Like the big twist. You're like, oh, I get it. Okay.
Certainly in a film like that, or like in this one, where there's like, he's a lot of dodging and then there's a, somewhat of a reveal at the end. But I am definitely like you as well, Chad. Like, people ask me the same thing. They're like, why would you watch that many times? I'm like, my response is always this. You like music, right? Yes. And how many times have you heard, whatever, Led Zeppelin 4? About 1 million. Exactly right. So what's the difference? The only difference is that there's a visual component as well as an audio component, and you watch stuff over. There's stuff that I've picked up on movies on watch number 20 that I never noticed before, and I love when that happens. So there's always, not always, but there's new stuff to be mined on multiple watches, and if the film's good enough and warrants that, yeah, it's great. And if it's not, you're not watching it 20 times.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a messy topic because there's movies that I only want to watch once, like Requiem for a Dream, and then there's movies that I'll watch 100 freaking times, like Requiem for a Dream is a really good movie, but I never want to see it again because I wanted to fucking kill myself after watching it, So,
Yeah,
what were you going to say?
Yeah, I was going to say, I would just add really quick that I feel like there's just so much. We're bombarded by so much now, and there's so much to watch that my habits are starting to change. Even, Kev, with music, I tend to not listen to things
That's
over
true.
and over again anymore, especially new stuff. I kind of discover stuff, and I'm like, oh, that's great. And then I move on to something else. And sometimes I'll come back to it, and other times I'll forget about it for years, So
Yes.
That's a great
that's
point.
like just the way we consume things, I think, is changing, and it's more like a sort of a la carte rather than always going for the. I mean, there are always going to be classics for me, but I wonder if, like, for people are, for like your kids, are they going to have classics, or
Yeah.
are they going to be constantly moving on to the next thing?
Well, that's a whole nother great topic right there, because that's been like right in my face lately, and I've been reading a lot about that. But I agree with you. One sec, Chad.
It's all good.
There's I know what you mean about the music. Like, I actually have to like consciously like make myself isn't the right phrase, but make myself listen to something again. You know what I mean? Like, I'll listen to it and I'll love it. And it's the programming now that, you just move on. So I have to like force myself to listen to it again. Like, case in point with the new Stallones album. Like, I remember listening to it and I was like, God, this is so good. And then it's like it just leapt out of my brain. And it was like a day or two later, I was like, oh, wait, yeah, you got to listen to that again. And like I kept having to force myself to do it. You know what I mean? Once I did, I was like, oh, this is great. But yeah, I totally feel you 100% on that. Same thing with like podcasts, films, all of that.
It's in one ear and out the other a lot of times. Like, I watched
Somewhat.
2 or 3 Gattaca YouTube videos today just prepping, and like before the show I was like, oh, I don't remember any of those. There you go. Watched them 3 hours ago. I have no idea what they were. you know, like.
Yeah.
But to the music point, I got my like Spotify year in review bullshit a month ago, and like my top songs of the year, I think like the number one was like 4 listens. You know what I mean? So
wow,
it's just like
that's
exactly
like
like you
nothing.
said. You know, you just don't revisit stuff as much. It's much more common to just, I don't know, the fire hose of new content, regardless of medium, is really a thing now.
Yeah, I think the other thing that I do with music, I just was remembering, because like we talked about Lisa Belladonna, we've been talking a lot about, you know, retro wave and synth and stuff like that here. And Ben recommended the Nick Hexum, George Clanton thing.
Which is
and
good.
we've talked about the Lisa Belladonna and the Mothership. And I got 4 tracks. I got the 2 Mothership tracks from Lisa Belladonna and the 2 Clanton and Hexum tracks. So the other thing that I'll do is, because there's so much content, it's like I spent 30 minutes browsing for something to watch the other night, and that was just on one streaming service. And I looked up and I looked at my watch and I was like, holy shit, like a half hour had gone by. So the opposite problem is that I'll just like, if I was like, I want to listen to music, I just put those 4 songs on because they were right there, they were accessible, and I didn't want to go through the other anxiety of trying to decide something to listen to, even if it's from my own back catalog, you know, of stuff that I've heard so many times. So there's the flip side of it.
No doubt. We talked about that a fair bit in our music episode a million years ago. It would be, I don't know how to kind of approach this other than maybe like eugenics. Like, I feel like one of the key elements of this movie is such an interesting space that's fraught, but just the idea of gene tailoring and then like the context of me watching it now with a couple of kids, one of which was IVF, and what that means. And it's such a fascinating, interesting space that I'm into, but also afraid of, and also like, yeah, it's just a wild space, and I think it would be worth talking about for a bit.
I totally agree. I mean, this movie, in a general sense, like when I was thinking about sort of high-level topics, it's like there's duality, there's racism, there's eugenics, there's nature versus nurture, or nature versus biology, or technology, or however you want to put it. You know, like he covers a lot of stuff in this movie. Go ahead.
It was more just a ramble. I'm curious if you guys had any thoughts about the space.
You know what? Remind the listeners what eugenics is.
Eugenics.
And me.
Verb. Jesus, I don't know how I don't know how much we need to get into like the nitty-gritty of it, but it's essentially like, yeah, see that I think that's the fraught. I think digging into eugenics is the fraught part of this, because it has a history with the Nazis and a history with, you know, really brutal racism and sterilizations and all kinds of really fucked up stuff. So I would, you know, if anyone's unfamiliar with eugenics, it just, you know, there's a Wikipedia hole that you could check out. And I definitely kind of feel like that cul-de-sac is maybe a little bit of a dangerous one for the purposes of this particular topic. But I suppose the thing that I'm interested in from this viewing is, if you could tailor your genes or your offspring's genes, would you? And while on the surface you'd watch this movie and say, fuck no, I'd never do it, like on the flip side, there's this test called the harmony test over here that both of my kids got tested for when they were in utero, and it's like tests for like 20 odd common issues like cystic fibrosis and Down syndrome and stuff, and it like helps a parent make an informed decision about what they want to do. And watching this movie just kind of made me think about, like, I don't know, like, is it okay to do a harmony test? Is it bad to do a harmony test? It's just such a crazy space. And then you mix in the idea that, like, even if you ban it in one country, another country will, you know, do it. And so it's just like a really crazy space, and technology is such that we're quickly approaching the realities of all of it. So that was kind of what I was thinking about.
Interesting. The only thing I'll add to it, at least at the moment, is that they do it in a very interesting way in the movie, is how they presented it in such a positive light. So in that scene when they go to see the doctor, Blair Underwood, you know, he's super calm, and he has like the perfect bedside manner and his voice, even the timbre of his voice and the whole thing. And he explains how, these children are you. They're just the very best of you, and we've, screened out all of these traits that are considered bad. And, so he presents it in a very like uplifting, positive light, which sort of makes it more twisted because we see the results of what adults do with it throughout the course of the story.
Yeah.
So I found that interesting.
Do you have any thoughts on the space, Benny?
Just in general, I'll refer to dystopia and my distaste for it. Gene therapies on the living and on embryos or whatever could be a very positive thing. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to create a class structure and, a type of, genoism or whatever they call it in this movie. It could, but it doesn't have to. And it also doesn't have to be done the same way. I mean, like I said, as far as I know now, with something like CRISPR-Cas9, the possibility of gene therapy of adults is possible, if genetic disease and things, could possibly, I'm not sure if we're doing it just yet, but, the potential for genetic disorders and genetic disease to be fixed in adults even is a possibility. So it's not even like the way this is panning out is that, it can only be done to an embryo. And, if you're already an adult and you're flawed, then you're fucked. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But just in general, the idea of the dystopia and the bad science thing then the people did bad stuff with it and now we're fucked. There's nothing, we're living in a dystopia, and there's nothing that we've scienced. There's no shitty situation we've scienced our way into that we're not going to get out of without sciencing our fucking way out of it. So, anyways, that's how I feel about it.
I really like your parlance in that spiel. Science our way in.
So yeah, the eugenics and the genoism, like it's scary stuff, but I just, if this is a cautionary tale about, well, we shouldn't go fucking around with stuff like that because, this is going to happen. Like, I just think that's really short-sighted and, every technology has the possibility to be used for good or used for bad. I think definitely we got to decide to start using it for good, all over. But anyway.
No, not anyway. Like, that's a really great point, as usual.
Yeah.
Like,
there's lots
exactly. Go ahead, Chad. You talk first. Lions has to go.
There's a lot of geopolitical implications and all that kind of stuff that's just too broad for the purposes of the show. But I suppose just it was the more I thought about this viewing, now that I've gone through some stuff with the kids that I've got, the more it kind of, I don't know if it doesn't make me second guess myself, but it just kind of puts an interesting new layer on things where, my firstborn was IVF and my secondborn was au naturel, but the interesting experience from the IVF thing is like, they do the whole, kit and caboodle and like, you've got X number of embryos and they're viable and this one's the best one and we think you should do this one. And, it's just interesting that even in that basic science format, you're already selecting and then you can do this harmony test stuff to figure out if your kid's, got some horrible, illness or whatnot in utero. And then the obvious implication is if they do that, the pregnancy would be terminated or whatever. So it's really fascinating in a way that I hadn't considered before, just how real a lot of this stuff is. And I definitely agree with you that it doesn't mean we're bound for the same dystopia, Benny, but it was just kind of an interesting to experience it this time around. Whereas 15 years ago, I was, still fucking partying a lot and stuff. So it's just a fascinating kind of space, I guess.
No, it really is, man. And I mean, we went through, they have similar things here, Chad. So,
yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about, certainly with children. But at the same time, I think the thing that really resonated with me was what you just said, Ben, about, dystopian future, but it doesn't have to be that way. You know what I mean? Like, I think in 1997 and maybe up until 10 or 15 years ago, it's like you talk about dystopia and it's like a cautionary tale and all of that sort of thing. But it's like, you know, like you said, we need to grow out of that. And you're right, it doesn't have to be that way. And, you know, the really key ingredient, you know, which is something that they touch on in a lot of science fiction stories is, you know, human growth of consciousness, man, because that's really what's going to get us to the point where we make the better decisions, you know, that the technology doesn't have to be used that way, that it can be used, you know, that we heeded those cautionary tales, you know, or we were just better and we made the better decisions. You know, I really like that comment, that idea.
Just to be clear, I'm not like condoning eugenics or
No, of course not.
I'm condoning the use of gene therapy to alleviate suffering in people, not necessarily to create a super race or something like that.
Yeah.
No, I'm speaking to what you're saying. I'm speaking to the whole idea of like, you know, it's always presented in a very negative light, but it's like, you know, that technology isn't all bad. You know what I mean? A lot of the things that we have aren't terrible in and of themselves. It's that we misuse them because human beings are just poor, you know, like poor people, and not being responsible and not being selfless enough with them, and not thinking, should we, before they think, could we, you know, which is a huge question surrounding technology and science in general. Go.
I think selfish is the key word there, where in my view, like one of the kind of frameworks that I use just in terms of my philosophy towards humanity is like the duality of animal and man, where like we have base biological constructs, like the way our brain is actually physically built, where there's like the animal core and those animal instincts, and then we have like the actual humanness wrapped in the prefrontal cortex and stuff. So you end up with like, I've got mine, protect my own, reproduce base instincts of the actual meat that we inhabit, but the selflessness of how do we ascend as a species is kind of the human element of it. And, you know, what I'm hearing from what you guys are saying is like, if a technology is utilized societally in a selfless way, you know, society can ascend. And if we use it in a selfish way,
Absolutely.
it descends, you know, like it feels like this movie's an attempt to kind of touch on like what it would look like if it descended in a way that's kind of like camouflaged as no big deal versus like a Terminator Annihilation style thing. But it feels like all of these dystopias are playing on those fears of when everyone's selfish and the I got mine kind of bullshit that we're living in these days.
True.
There's also a component of just, you know, humans are terribly short-sighted. Like we're not very good at, you know, projecting years and years into the future. So sometimes it's just bumbling, you know. I mean, for instance, you know, pollution and, you know, components that could be leading to climate change are, you know, more the result of us sort of, you know, plodding along, using something because it's convenient and good for us, and you know, actually is good for us at the heart of it. But, you know, there's the second component that nobody thought about.
Second order effects.
So I think it's like partially, you know, human nature and being selfish versus being altruistic. But then there's also just, you know, being short-sighted, you know, and not having the ability to think about things moving forward into the future.
I agree. I think it's all those things apply for sure.
Big topic, but super interesting space.
Yeah, not just to use this as a little bit of a segue or what you just said, Chad. You know, the other thing that it touches on, or at least it leaps out to me, is, you know, the difference, the duality of, you know, bioengineering like the perfect person, right? So Anton is the best of those two parents, and Vincent is 100% au naturel. And, you know, with the bioengineered child, it's like you're guaranteed to succeed. You're guaranteed this. You're guaranteed life expectancy, health, all of this sort of thing, because we have tailored you that way. And then somebody like Vincent comes along, or any one of the borrowed ladders, as described in the film, and it's like they circumvent all of that stuff, and not only do they do the same, but they totally knock it out of the park, even more so than those people could do. And, you know, so the idea of nature will always be nature, and nature conquers, and nature will always find a way is very present in the story, and I love that, because, you know, you're rooting for Vincent the entire time, or Jerome, or whatever. You know, and I I love that concept, and I love seeing that nature triumph, and it's, your heart only, there's only a 1 in 100 chance that you will die when you're 30, and it's like he says when he's younger, right before he leaves his house or leaves home, is, there's a chance nothing may be wrong, and it's really about having the I don't know if mental acuity is the right word, but the sort of presence of mind and body to be okay with that or not, and have to and be so worried about it, that you have to get your kids tailored and get all of the quote bad things out, like that nature put in there. You know what I mean? Like, because you really see the dad's anxiety, like in that scene. He's like, you can't do that, and he's like, but there's a chance there could be nothing wrong. And she's like, the mom's like, you're never gonna be anything but cleaning, and he's like, well, maybe, like, so there's that theme jumps out at me for sure.
Determination versus giving up.
Well, yeah, and really just the natural way versus the unnatural way. And, kind of hearkening back to the last segment of the conversation, like what Ben was saying about short-sightedness and human foolishness. And I've touched on this in the past, like the arrogance of humans is astounding to me. You know what I mean? To even think that we could start messing around with genes and do it, quote, better than nature it just blows my mind. We think sometimes that we are better than nature and that we can do it better than nature. And it's folly and foolishness.
But we'll still give it a whirl.
No doubt about that.
And you kind of got to give it a whirl. Like the folly and foolishness is the same thing that old mate's parent said to him. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to do it anyways. Like, it's this very similar idea.
It is. Yeah, you're right. What did you have, Ben?
Well, the flip side of what you're talking about, Kev, is that these, the genetic superhumans, the manipulated embryos, the ones that are, supposedly the best of their parents' genes. The two examples that we see most prominently in the movie, one being Vincent's brother Anton, and the other being the other being Jerome Morrow. These people are really flawed in a lot of ways, and it just seems odd that it's almost as if the people that have been given the advantage genetically have rested on their laurels, and they don't care to put any effort in to succeed. And that's where Vincent's able to come in with, his desire being the major thing that pushes him over the top and allows him to compete. So it would seem that maybe that's a thing, that these people that are given the advantage are just, they know they have an advantage, therefore they are resting on their laurels to a degree.
Lazy.
It also seems to create this degree of depression and such. So it's like clearly things weren't thought very well through in the manipulation of genes, because or perhaps like in focusing on the, we don't very well understand what happens if you change one aspect of a person to something positive, if that creates a deficit in another area, because things are interconnected, So it's like they've focused on giving, Jerome, this amazing heart that Tony Shalhoub is talking about him, going through a wall and, all this stuff. But clearly, he's extremely depressed and he tried to kill himself and he just doesn't really care about his own life that much. So, it's like they've focused on creating these physically perfect people, but, mentally they're lacking something.
Absolutely, man. And just to add on top of that, Ben, the part that because they're engineered so perfect and they're told that and they know that when he gets the silver medal, it absolutely destroys him to the point where he walks out into traffic. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like he says Jerome Morrow was never meant for second place. You know what I mean? So you're also creating an emotional and a psychological malignancy where you can't deal with anything but success. And that is as much of a problem as the opposite problem, that kids have today, which is all the screen exposure and social media exposure is creating anxiety in them that is literally an epidemic, according to some professors and doctors now.
Absolutely.
And they do.
Dr. Stallone, nice to hear from you.
Thank you for to adding some levity to this heavy duty segment. But they can't deal even with any kind of minor criticism. I've seen this firsthand. So it's super super interesting, man.
Yeah, Gore.
That's what I like about the. But this is what I like about the movie. Oh, one sec, Chad. It's just got these layers to it. You know what I mean? And it really makes you think about those things. And that's what I think makes this film so good, and why it's one of probably on my all-time list, up there in the top 20, easy.
Yeah, it's a good one. The bit where
good.
The lead scientist dude played by Gore Vidal is like, no one goes beyond their potential. Like it's so clearly a flawed statement. And it so clearly indicates the societal structure based on the genetic hierarchy is just not. It's just total bullshit.
It is.
But at the same time, you could see how a society would buy into it. And then the whole point is, it's the drive. It's borrowed ladder Vincent's drive that pushes him over the top.
Totally. And I think, Ben, what you were saying, your last thought, I would have added the director to that as well, because like you said, these are incredibly flawed people, and he's the same way. Like, he seems like this polished pinnacle, an older man of this, eugenics, gene tailoring thing that they're doing now in society. But, come to find out at the very end of it, is that he's as much of an animal as everybody else. He's the one that kills the director. And it's not like he poisons the guy or, snaps the guy's neck. Like, and I think this must have been intentional when he wrote it. Like, he brutally beats the guy over the head with a computer keyboard. I mean, like, you see the keyboard and you see the director that died briefly in a couple of flashes, So it's interesting that his thread wraps up with, now that they can't stop the mission, I'll tell you whatever you want. But I had to beat the guy like an animal to get what I wanted. Like, that was crazy, especially after he says, check my profile. You won't find a violent bone in my body.
Yeah.
Or if I do it like Gore Vidal, he goes, check my profile. You won't find a violent bone in my body.
But, hearkening back to Dr. Stallone, I'm not trying to insult this movie here, but like, there are some serious parallels between this and Demolition Man, I find.
No doubt.
With the falsely perfect society and whatnot. So
you're not denigrating this film by comparing it to Demolition Man, because thematically there's a lot of similarities. Certainly in that, I think that's actually one of the coolest parts of Demolition Man is, the way they engineered the future. I think the problem with that film was that Joe wanted to make it an action movie, Bill wanted to make it a science fiction movie, and then somebody else was like, let's throw in Dennis Leary and all of this crazy shit and throw it in a blender, and it just turns into, I don't even know what, a meat grinder. Anyway.
A masterpiece.
Let's throw in Rob Schneider.
Yeah.
Let's throw in Rob Schneider, Dennis Leary, and Wesley Snipes. And then, you put that in a blender and it's like, what do you get? You get that movie.
You get fucking movie magic, Kev. Movie magic.
Yeah, movie magic, baby.
So I can thread the needle here if you want, where...
Please.
You were very disagreeable when I mentioned that the gentleman playing the Jolly Green Giant song on the piano in the Taco Bell at Demolition Man was Dan Cortese from MTV Sports, which is verified. And I want to bring that up because his co-host, Gabriel Reese, is the trainer in the jogging room in this movie, and I loved that.
Oh, shit, you're right. It is her. Wow, nice one, dude.
Yeah.
That's a nice needle threading right there.
MTV Sports co-host Gabrielle Reese.
That's right, baby.
She's a badass, by the way. Married to Laird Hamilton. They do some cool stuff.
Yes. Laird Hamilton, the surfer.
Yeah. So that's it. Now we're back in the room. The running room. Jerome, the metronome.
Jerome, the metronome.
I didn't realize that this was Jude Law's American debut. How about that for a random little thing?
How about them apples, Chief?
How about them apples there, bub?
Because I knew that it was the first time I saw him was in this movie, and I thought he was perfect.
Dude, he's great.
He really embodied the sort of privileged guy that gets knocked off his pedestal, you know. And the beauty of him and his performance is that we clearly can see the change over the course of the film, where he comes to accept his situation and respect what Vincent's doing, and respect him as a person, and respect him as a natural birth person.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, they seem like they genuinely come to, you know, go from having a symbiosis in the beginning to genuinely loving each other. I'll even go that far, you know. And they're sad when he's leaving, you know, to go to Titan. And it's super sad when he gets inside the incinerator and just blasts himself.
But it fit. It works for the character, I think. He's got a great little arc.
Definitely does. I'm glad that he got inside the incinerator and did that, you know, because it just added more layers to this already awesome story.
Who would kill themselves by fucking burning themselves alive? Jesus Christ.
Pretty rough.
Well, as I've contemplated taking my own life a lot lately, because everything sucks, I've been through the gamut of what would be good, quick, and easy, and what would just be gruesomely painful.
Be pretty rough.
That's definitely at the top of the list of taking way too long. Kind of like, you know, Mustafa in Austin Powers. I'm still here. I'm just very, very badly burnt.
Exactly. I liked his Jude Law's ability to be a super angry, privileged person, like when he yells at the cop who's talking about him outside, and his ability to kind of like bullshit the cop when he pulls himself up the staircase. I think like he was perfect for that.
Give me your number.
What's your fucking number?
He's just perfectly cast. Evidently the casting director saw him on Broadway, and that was how he got the role, so it's pretty cool.
Killer, man. He's so great in this. I just absolutely love him.
Yeah. And he's great opposite Ethan Hawke, too, which I don't know how much I knew of Ethan Hawke's previous body of work. I was a little bit too young for the Reality Bites stuff. I don't think I saw this until a few years after it came out. So
he was in Explorers with River Phoenix when they were like 12.
Yeah, right.
Wow.
Did I just blow your mind, bro?
Is that the one where the kids make the spaceship?
Yes, with like the garbage can and all that other crap.
Right.
And
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I barely remember it, but
Yeah,
I remember
same.
that bit of it. There's a
I remember
sci-fi
being
movie.
psyched to see it and then kind of being disappointed when I did.
We might need to revisit that, actually. That might be a good candidate for the show. Anyway,
Kids films.
Yeah.
80s kids films, exactly.
Flight of the Navigator, brah.
I vote for Cloak and Dagger.
There you go. Oh, Dabney Coleman, dude. Yes. And who is the kid? Henry Thomas, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. I
Jack
think,
Flack.
What's that?
Jack Flack.
Jack Flack, right. I think, sorry, Chad, didn't mean to hijack your
No, that was what I was going for. I was teeing you up.
teeing us up. That's where I first saw Ethan Hawke, or I know that he was in that. I think the first thing I saw him in as an adult was, it wasn't Reality Bites. It was something else. I just don't remember what it was. So I was well familiar with his work, is my point, by the time this came around. And
And you're taking an ejection death, it sounds like? Sounds like we have
The fact that you knew just by the cadence of my voice is the best part of what just happened. And we desperately needed a death, so we finally got one.
Yeah.
I sense that I'm going to have to start taking a bunch of show notes coming up really, really soon here.
Why's that? Oh, yeah. We're going to everybody Kevs.
Because every time there's an everybody Kevs, I have to like put down,
That was a good list last week, Benny.
movies and try to find references to 15 different characters that this one particular actor has played, and then that usually leads to a side avenue about another movie that a director did. And
I think your 70-odd point list last week was might be a record. I've had a couple that were in that space.
Yeah, Kev, I wanted to like murder you. Like we were coming down the home stretch, and I finally thought I had written down like the last I was like, okay, this is it. I'm done with the show notes. We're like in like the end of the show, and you brought up something else. I was like, God damn it!
Sorry.
No, it's not like it's not like we're thinking about this stuff when we're recording, or that it's it's just like while I was taking the notes down, I was like, God damn it!
No.
I had like closed my notebook and everything, put the pen away,
And then on top of that, I think I sent you a message on WhatsApp, and I was like, "Oh, by the way."
Yeah.
Just getting back to Ethan Hawke. The first thing I remember him in, I did eject and look him up. It's Dead Poet Society with Robin Williams.
Yeah,
that was excellent movie. 80s movie.
I was definitely aware of him when I first saw this movie, but I can't quite remember where from. Maybe it was from that. Maybe it was from Dead Poet Society.
I need to revisit Dead Poet Society. I don't remember that at all.
It's an interesting sort of white privileged kid boarding school movie. But Kurtwood Smith is in it, and he's as evil as ever, which is great.
Well, in a subtle piece of irony here, Benny, in a game off moment, our current record is 78 links, and that was in the Stranger Things season 3 show. And the irony is that show is only possible because of Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman meeting in this movie and producing their daughter, who was in Stranger Things season 3.
Everything is connected.
Yeah, that's it, huh?
This guy's had a very interesting career. He makes interesting movie choices.
Yeah, man.
As an actor, but he was in Dead Poets. He was in Alive. White Fang was another one that was a little kind of more high profile when he was younger.
The Before trilogy.
And the Before trilogy, which is I didn't realize that was a Linklater trilogy.
Yeah, same.
I love Richard Linklater.
I think the other one that's adjacent to this is Predestination, which I believe the creators are huge fans of this movie. So it's kind of interesting they have a similar aesthetic.
Yeah, Predestination is great. Did you guys ever see Daybreakers? Was it kind of like a futuristic vampire movie? Yeah, I think Sam Neill might have been in that. That was good. And of course, Training Day, great movie.
Shit pushed it.
Yes, that's right. That's where that comes from. Anyway, so let's move on from Hawke. I feel like we're in like a Hawke gravity well that we can't get out of.
Yeah, Ben's just being quiet so that we'll stop putting things that go in the show notes. Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman met on this one, got married.
That's right.
Gave birth shortly after the movie came out, I believe, to Maya, who is from Stranger Things season 3.
Yes, nice, very meta connection there. I think that Uma is this is a really great showcase of her work.
Definitely,
she has this really quiet intensity in this movie that's great. For her in this movie, it's about what she's doing in the negative space rather than the dialogue, because it's very sparse and super minimal, especially for her character. And there's just not a brooding intensity, but an intensity there that I just love, and it really comes across great on the screen. So love this piece of work for her. Might be one of my favorite things that she's done.
It's definitely good. Yeah, she embodies the tightness of the society very well in the character. Very wound, very tight.
Yeah, and there's and again, like I said, duality. Like there's great duality between her and or a great dynamic between her and Ethan Hawke, and just in terms of like he reveals to her that he's a vitro birth, and they have a similar heart situation. Like she has a somewhat defective heart, like him. There's all that, and I like how she just accepts him for who he is at the end, and she doesn't really care, which is fantastic. Like when he's sitting against the car and gives her the hair, and she just goes, "Oops, it blew away," or the wind caught it.
Yeah, she's. This might be one of my favorite things that she's ever been into. She's really good in this.
Really, really good in this.
I still think Pulp Fiction is probably my number one for her, but it's very different.
It is very different.
She's just so fucking cool as Mia Wallace, but different movie.
But she's also she's well appointed for this role. Like
Yeah.
the costuming and the look and that sort of, she looks very perfectly polished and appointed and put together, and I don't know, not posh, but somewhat.
Yeah, that's a decent word for it.
Yeah.
Posh fits.
Let's segue. Who else?
I really wanted to hear Benny drop a Snake. How you doing? Earlier.
You can still do it, man, because we haven't gotten there yet. I actually did a lot of. I ended up going down a little bit of a hole with him.
You
last
don't
night.
say.
Reading about reading about Ernest Borgnine. I was so excited when I saw him in this movie originally. He's, great example of a great older actor, classic actor, seasoned actor who could just take a small part and just make it so memorable, man. Like he's super memorable as the cleanup manager, as the cleaning supervisor. He's great. And maybe it's just him, the way he is, like his voice and all of that stuff. But I just love that he was in this as a supporting character. Like, this movie is similar to True Romance in the sense that, like, all of the supporting players were either heavy hitters at one time, or they were heavy hitters, or they were going to be heavy hitters later, like Borgnine, like Xander Berkeley, who played the doctor. You mentioned the Flatfoot, the "you fucking Flatfoot" scene with Jude Law before, and the guy that played the Flatfoot was, it was Dean Schrader. I mean, not Dean Schrader was his name in Breaking Bad, but
Yeah, the cop, the DEA dude.
it's Dean Norris. That's it, Dean Norris. It wasn't Dean Schrader. Schrader was his last name in Breaking Bad. So anyway, yeah, Dean Norris played the cop that he berates. But it's a great a lot of great cast members. Even Maya Rudolph was actually in this movie, and so was and then the dad was played by Elias Koteas, who's been in a ton of stuff. Really, really great. Blair Underwood again, same thing. Tony Shalhoub, Alan Arkin.
I feel
Warren
like
Beatty.
Ernest Borgnine and use your brain,
Do it. You can do it.
the director.
Gore Vidal.
Thank you. I feel like Ernest Borgnine and Gore Vidal were great choices just because they're that different generation of actor and they kind of fit the aesthetic of the film in a way.
Very much so.
You mean the people fit the aesthetic of the film?
Yeah, just the actors of that generation were, like, obviously Gore Vidal was more of an intellectual of that generation, but they fit the 50s brutalist architectural, suited and booted classic car aesthetic, the retrofuturism, because they had the retro, they brought the retro acting chops in a way.
Yeah. No, you're right.
It was a clever choice.
Very.
That Ernest Borgnine, he's retro.
He's so retro. So is Gore.
Yeah, I love the little moment with Ernest Borgnine where Vincent comes down the stairway and they like see each other and they look at each other for a minute and he's like, "Oh, let me take that for you, Mr. Morrow," And there's this sort of like just little moment of like, you're not sure whether he recognizes him, but you kind of think he definitely recognizes him. And it's sort of like a little like, nod, wink thing.
That's interesting that you say that. I always took that still to these last two watchings that he doesn't recognize him.
I guess this is a cutting room floor scene where it's clear that he did.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know if it's the same scene, just longer, or whether it's another scene that makes it clear that he knows what's up. Because it plays to that, like, "you'll see me on the other side of the glass" comment earlier, so.
Right. Isn't there another scene in the movie where he's clearly sort of covering for him?
There's the other scene in the movie where he gets yelled at for cleaning up, and he's like, "It's just trash,"
Right.
But I don't know if there was anything else specific.
Oh, I never thought of that, man. You think that that's what he might have been doing when he picked up the trash and he goes, "Oh, that's just trash."
Well, yeah, it would be considering that scene that was cut, yeah.
He knew what was going on and he was trying to help him along.
Like the doc.
Like the doc.
Yes, Xander Berkeley. Love that guy.
I definitely didn't pick up on the doc knowing the whole time from the opening scene with the doc, where he's like, "Let me tell you about my son sometime," like. I didn't remember that from my previous viewings, and it was I like that they set that up so early so that like somewhat implausible element is you already are aware of it,
Well, that's the beauty of it, is that when he says that in the beginning, you can't really tell. They leave it vague enough
Yeah.
that later you can make the connection after he sort of does the reveal of saying that, my son's the same way. He's a big admirer of yours, but it's like they leave it vague enough that you don't know.
Yeah, right up until the invalid shows up. Yeah.
Exactly.
Guys that are right-handed don't hold it with their left.
Yeah, that's right. And the other thing that's interesting too, just a sort of somewhat of a little diversion away from the cast for a second, is that like when he tests him at the end and his invalid ID picture comes up, like it's sort of like the whole system is starting to crack apart. Like it's not just that Vincent has achieved this, feat that was considered impossible, but that there's more people that don't believe in that, and that it's starting to somewhat unravel is what I was kind of, I kind of feel that sometimes when I watch it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like
Definitely.
that between that and the.
Also, he never was doing it on his own.
Yeah.
There
Like
were all
he always
these
had
people
help.
that were sort of helping him along behind the scenes.
Right. But I'm also saying that like that whole idea of, the genetic superior, our superior, seemed like it was kind of coming unglued by the end of the movie between the director and then them having the last swimming race and the doc, all that stuff. Maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'm curious if it's meant to just I'm curious if it's meant to reveal the story to the viewer that, like, in a way, from a storytelling perspective, it makes more sense to have it look like it's unraveling or it's getting broader and broader and there's more and more helpers as the story progresses, as opposed to it being like, over the course of a month or whatever in the movie space, the society's falling apart, Like, I suppose it's just a way to ratchet tension as opposed to it being like a representative deterioration of society over a short period of time, if that makes sense. Like, as a storytelling device is what I'm saying.
Right.
Yeah.
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 Because I like that he's being helped by other people. I like that it seems like it's a hollow societal construct, as opposed to he being the one guy that's going against this, like, evil empire, kind of blow up the Death Star. Oh, this is Star Wars death kind of thing.
Oh, dude.
Oh, you did that on purpose.
No, I didn't, but there it is.
You climbed into the cremation chamber.
I didn't push
you
the
did.
button.
A little metal.
I did.
A little silver metal on.
I did. You know what I mean, though? Like, I kind of like that
I
it's not like the one good guy versus the evil empire. It's like the one normal guy versus this really stupid societal construct, and everyone that's not in this elite team is like, this is kind of bullshit, and they're all helping each other out. I think that's a great layer.
I like that. I like that layer too.
It also changes. It changes the story from, like, if that hadn't been there, it would have been like this sort of like meritocracy propaganda. Like, see, if you try hard, then you'll rise to the top. And, it's like, no, he actually had help all along the way. This was not a pull yourself up by the bootstraps story. It was a story of, someone giving it a whirl and people sort of propping him up.
Yeah.
Along the way.
And that's on top of how incredibly meticulous and careful he was. Which would be so difficult, man.
Yeah, no doubt.
Cleaning up essentially your mess from your body that is constantly falling off of you, and then spreading somebody else's around, as a sleight of hand. It's crazy. I loved that whole element of the movie.
Yeah, even the opening credits with what turns out were like 5-foot-long pieces of wire that they were dropping with a high-speed camera to make it look like hairs and stuff.
I will never forget when I first saw this movie, seeing that super close-up of all this stuff falling and just being like, what in the hell am I looking at? Who else?
Alan Arkin? I think we touched on him, but he was great.
Alan Arkin is always great. But his body of work is incredible, man. And this is no different. Again, smaller part, but he really knocks it out of the park. Playing the sort of subservient Vitro to the superior Lauren Dean, or Anton, rather.
They played off each other really well, those two.
Really well.
You said it.
we touched on Dean Norris, and then again, like it was, I guess in '97, Tony Shalhoub hadn't quite reached like the level of like respect that he certainly carries now. I mean, he had done Wings, but Wings. I think he also was in Quick Change too. Bliff to me. All right, I'll stop. I'm going to just put that down as a death.
I just saw in a random Everybody Kebs moment earlier today that he was the voice of Master Splinter in one of the Ninja Turtles fucking movies, which I was just like, okay. Yeah,
Tony
man.
Shalhoub was?
The Lube.
The Lube.
Friend of the show, The Lube.
The 2014 Ninja Turtles movie.
Wow.
Which, like, I have never had a desire to watch that, and now I kind of want to see it. Oh, wait, never mind. Megan Fox is in it.
I've never seen any of the Ninja Turtles movies.
You never
Even Corey
saw
Feldman.
the Vanilla Ice
No.
Go Ninja Go? Come on, dude.
No.
I'm picking
No, I
that
know.
then, just to fuck with you.
No, that's fine. Go for it. I mean, I even Corey Feldman couldn't draw me in, and I was a huge Corey Feldman fan when I was younger. I couldn't draw me into those movies.
Johnny Knoxville is Leonardo's voice in this. I'm going to shut up now.
All right, we need to do that. We need to do a movie that we just completely
Just
eviscerate.
Fucking annihilate. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, man. All right, so let's
down.
wrap up. Well, go ahead.
Oh no, I'm down with the
TMNT?
Ninja Turtles movie.
Let's do it. Let's do the Megan Fox one.
Oh, God.
I'll just add that I always liked Tony Shalhoub, but I really fell for him in Galaxy Quest.
Mm.
I don't know if that's where I fell for him, but he was awesome. Tech Sergeant Chen.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a lot of people haven't seen or appreciated Monk, which was a fantastic.
I haven't. I've heard great things, man.
It's so good, and the actors are fantastic. It's not just Tony Shalhoub. The captain is Ted Levine.
Yeah, never seen him.
Who we know and love from Put the Oatmeal in the Fucking Bowl. Yeah, he was Ted Levine was a captain in that, and he's great. They play great together, man, because Ted Levine's like kind of plays the straight guy. It's great. Check it out. Anybody at home, if you haven't seen Monk, check it out. It's worth a watch.
Should we transition into like notable
Just about to say that.
moments and stuff like that?
Bits and bulbs.
Bits and bobs.
Bits and bulbs.
Bits and bulbs. Yeah, go ahead. Who wants to go first?
I'll throw this in just because we haven't done it earlier. I was not familiar with the director of this movie and never gave two shits. And finding out that it was his debut film was pretty impressive.
Oh, this guy is awesome. He's a Kiwi, and I feel like Andrew Niccol is on the same level as who's the guy that we love that did Devs? Alex Alex
Garland.
Garland.
Alex Garland. I feel like Andrew Niccol is similar to Alex Garland. Like he writes his own stuff and he directs his own stuff. I feel like he didn't get the recognition, and it might have been like a timing thing. But
Yeah, probably.
you look through his body of films. Like I haven't seen all of them. I really haven't seen any of them except this one. But now I actually want to go and watch all of them. I've always wanted to see In Time with Timberlake. Which is a science fiction film. And then Lord of War is a pretty highly regarded movie that stars Nick Cage. And,
I was blown away that he wrote Truman Show. That's pretty cool.
well, yeah, exactly. And then he also did Good Kill, which also stars Ethan Hawke. That came out in 2014. So definitely warrants some more investigation. It's certainly going to happen on my part.
Yeah, definitely.
This movie, the level of detail, and again, speaking to Niccol, like is fantastic in this movie, and really left no stone unturned. Used every budget dollar to get the look that he wanted, and he achieved it. And the Marin County Civic Center is the building that they used to shoot, for the space headquarters, which I think is pretty cool. And it was also designed by Frank Lloyd Wright, who we've obviously touched on quite a bit in the Hyperion episodes. So really, really cool. I also really liked the just the way it was shot. The use of light and shadow in this movie was fantastic, and I thought it was really well done, the cinematography, and also the costuming. It was sort of simple and fantastic. The whole film had a very simple clean aesthetic to it, you know, and I'm a huge fan of time periods that are sort of ambiguous. Like you can't really tell when exactly it takes place. Like it takes place in the future, but the cars are electric, but they're very kind of 1960s, you know, and all the cops wear like these J. Edgar, you know, fedoras and trench coats, and you know, there's a lot of really cool touches in this movie that really round out that world nicely.
You just kind of blasted through a bunch of stuff there.
Yeah, I did. I was trying to kind of, I don't know, keep it. I guess I was trying to keep it semi-short and sweet, but we can pause on any one you want.
Beats and bulbs.
It is a bit, and it's a bulb.
Just on the cinematography a bit, I saw some people talking about the color palette and how like green is dangerous and red is good, which was interesting. Like kind of in this film, like red was kind of connoted, had connotations for blood, and that was like the pure form of, you know, proving who you were, and green is nature and like man's domination over nature. There's some really interesting kind of studies of it, which is kind of cool because it's a very strange color palette. You don't normally come across like strong red and green in too many films.
No, and there's nothing like, even those colors, when they are present, they don't really pop. The grays and the blacks are really what dominates the entire movie. You know, and like
if memory serves, you see a lot of green and red in their, you know, the whatever operating system their computer terminals are using.
There's like the tunnel lights, and speaking of tunnel lights, I really like the road crossing scene. That was a notable scene I really dug.
Yeah, scary too. You kind of feel it. You're like there with him.
Yeah, it's a good showcase of his drive. He's like, oh, fuck it, here we go. The whole don't save anything for the swim back kind of thing.
Yeah, that concept, that was one of my notes, actually.
I really dug the piano concert.
Oh, yeah. The Plava Laguna 12-fingered piano dude.
Yeah, the reveal at the end where the pianist is 6 fingers on each hand, and then the part where Inigo Montoya comes swinging in from the chandelier and says, I am Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die.
For a minute there, I actually confused Inigo Montoya with Enrico Palazzo, and I had no idea where you were going, but I'm so glad I came back to reality.
Enrico Palazzo. You mean Patricia Arquette's son, Enrico Palazzo?
Yes, exactly. I totally forgot about Inigo Montoya's extra digit. That's fantastic. He is the pianist? That would be so cool.
Well, no, he didn't have the extra digit. The 6-fingered man, Christopher Guest, had the extra digit. Inigo Montoya was hunting him down.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's a death right there.
His father's murderer had 6 fingers.
That is a death, and
it took me a minute to get that too. I didn't get where you were going right away.
And that 6-fingered gentleman was the pianist in this movie.
Pianist?
There you have it, folks. Some more well-oiled EBD theory craft.
Yeah.
Anybody want a pianist?
That's Gattaca, everybody.
And that's Gattaca. And everybody, it's also, I love the future. Everybody's smoking. Like, there's a lot of smoking.
Why not?
Like,
yeah.
Well, and it's just interesting that now when you see movies about the future, nobody smokes, you know, but like.
Smoking was still cool in 1997, bro.
Yeah, you're right.
No, it's definitely cool in the 40s, which is the sort of, you know, the aesthetic vision of the movie. So
yeah, it worked well. Quickly, the score I really enjoyed.
It was good.
The theme, the main theme from this, the opening theme from this film, is very much in my DNA. Like it's very memorable. You know, it's like as soon as I start to hear it, I just think of Gattaca and all those fingernails falling on the floor. Fingernails.
Yeah, it's haunting.
We didn't say the obvious, which is like one of the earlier pieces of trivia where Gattaca is based on the 4 first letters of the genome, which is
you
cool.
cocksucker.
Did I steal your nugget? I stole it. That's good.
You gotta, wow.
What's funny is I didn't really bother to confirm that. I was like, it just has to be.
Yep, that's it, yeah.
Well, all those letters are highlighted in all the names of the cast and the crew in the opening credits as well. And the closing credits, so.
But you, for whatever reason, when you were like, yeah, the score, like, we kind of haven't talked about scores very much over the last, 30, 40 episodes. We used to talk about them all the time, but for some reason, every once in a while, when you mention a score, I immediately flashback to Commando where you guys were like, blink, 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 blink. Just kind of get flashbacks to when we've nerded out on scores. And it's nothing to do with the price of milk, but I had that moment again.
No. That was that was a major nerd out. I'll tell you what. For me and Jarhigo. Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah, there's been a lot of good scores. We keep kind of glazing over them. Yeah, that's what it is. Go ahead. What were you gonna say, Ben?
I was gonna say, so ACGT are the 4 types of bases found in the DNA molecule: adenine, cytosine, guanine, and thymine.
There you go.
We never finished it.
That is very cool. I always loved that. When I discovered that, I was like, wow, super awesome.
Gattaca.
Speaking of DNA, I never picked up on the obvious, which was the use of spiral helical staircases in this. And that was super obvious, but I was...
oh, shit. I never noticed
that
either.
Yeah, look at that. He climbed up... you can't get up the top of his own spiral staircase because he's got a wheelchair.
Yeah.
His house was strangely not set up very well for somebody with somebody in a wheelchair.
How dare you, sir?
Really
he injured himself.
Was there even a lift in there that he could get upstairs and downstairs?
Maybe that's what he thought he was doing. He thought he was getting in the lift, but he turned it out he torched himself.
Well, if I thought he was getting in the lift, it was like the dumbwaiter, dude, because it was so small.
Hey, man, you do what you got to do. I ain't climbing that set of stairs again. Fuck it. Grab your mitt.
After watching him do it when Irene came over.
That was a cool little scene, too, where she comes in and plays along. I like that scene.
Yeah, that was a really good scene. I liked how jaded he was in the beginning, and he kept like letting Vincent know that he was better than him. Like all the time, like he made like when he was getting the contacts together for his eyes and changing the color, and he was like, "That's right, my eyes are prettier," with a lot of stank on it, dude.
Well crafted. It's a well crafted film.
Yeah. Very much so. Really good, really seriously good Jude Law in this movie, man. This might be one of his best things.
I have such a soft spot for Enemy at the Gates, but it's a completely different movie.
That's a really, really good movie. He does really well in that movie.
Nugget stats ratings?
Yes. Let's move on. I only have like one or two.
Go for it, brah.
Nah, you go first.
Jude Law's character asks to be called by his middle name, Eugene, which comes from the Greek word for well-born, which he is. Eugenics is the central theme of the film.
Damn it. See, there's so many things I still have never put together about this movie. There's a lot of layers here. That's why this movie is so excellent.
There's a whole bunch of stuff to all the names in this that I didn't really feel like digging into. But
well, Jerome is like genome, like... Yeah,
and all kinds of stuff.
Genome rather. All right, let's go tat for tat. I'll do a nugget next. Okay, so I didn't realize this though. I was just reading it on Wiki as we were going through this stuff. The film, the working title was actually The Eighth Day. But
like Genesis,
which I think would have been a great title. But there was a Belgian film that had already been released in the US under the title The Eighth Day when it came over here. And as a result, the film was retitled to Gattaca. And I like that just kind of blows me away. Like The Eighth Day is a great title for this movie, for obvious reasons, but like I think Gattaca is a brilliant title for this movie. And when I found out about like what Ben just said, all the components of DNA, and that's where the name comes from, that just blew me away.
Yeah, it's genius. So the eighth day, like the book of Genesis, eighth day?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there is no eighth day.
No, I know. I just didn't know if it was
eugenics, obviously, but or maybe not so obviously, but
they should have changed it to the 25th hour.
Whoa!
Yes, exactly. Whoa!
Totally.
I just think Gattaca is a really clever.
It's clever, yeah.
It's a really smart, inventive name for a movie about what it's about.
Yeah,
so to even find out that it had another name originally. That was a cool name in and of itself. Was pretty excellent.
Yeah, dog.
There, go ahead, brah.
This was a bit of a silly nugget, but kind of interesting. The public address announcements on occasion were in Esperanto, which I thought was kind of funny.
Yeah, well, I read a little bit about that. Is that Is there anything to expound on in that?
I mean, I think it just like Esperanto is just so of that. I don't know, that same kind of Ernest Borgnine, Gore Vidal intellectual brutalism generation that I just think it's clever that they sprinkled it in there. It fits the aesthetic.
That's very cool. All right, my last one. There's plenty of nuggets out there about this movie, but I'll use this one because this one kind of jumped out at me. And this is I'm almost reading directly from Wiki. Rand Paul, the U.S. Senator, I believe is from Kentucky, used near verbatim portions of the plot summary from the English Wikipedia entry on Gattaca in a speech at Liberty University in 2013 in support of Virginia Attorney General Ken Cuccinella's campaign for governor of Virginia. Paul was accusing pro-choice politicians of advocating eugenics in a manner similar to the events in Gattaca. So pretty cool and interesting that this movie is literally used as an example in a situation not unlike that. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Don't know much about it. I know that NASA considers it one of the most scientifically accurate film ever. So I suppose it makes sense that he's used it as an example here and there.
Right.
We didn't touch on this in the early part of the show, but I didn't realize that how much of a flop this movie was. So it fits firmly into the cult classic category where it lost
no doubt
15, 20 mil. It's like a 38 million budget and it made 15. So it's disappointing. It doesn't surprise me. I mean, people want to see fucking comic book movies. They don't want to see movies they have to think in, but still, it's a shame.
I'm trying to think, like, what else came out around this year? You know, like, this is probably when...
It got beaten by Devil's Advocate in 7 Years in Tibet's third week and stuff. So, like, there was some interesting stuff around the time, but...
Yeah, I just, also this, like, for science fiction at this time, it was probably more like pew-pew lasers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Superheroes were not around yet.
No.
Spider-Man was about to come out. But, yeah, there wasn't really anything going on there. So, not surprised. Shame. Because it's such an excellent movie. And I'm very happy to see that it's garnered a cult following. Because that's really the best thing that can happen to any film or, sort of property like that, in my opinion.
Agreed.
That's it. That's all I got.
Same.
What else you got, Chad?
That's it. Deaths.
And then you ruined Benny's one nugget that he's had in like a month. So that was great. Nice job. We need to put a death down for that. Because that was like you full on greased him.
You just want to kill Benny. Well, there you go. There's a segue into deaths.
I ejected on Ethan Hawke. You had a Star Wars death. I had a hearty giggle about Tony Shalhoub that nobody cared about but me.
I also died by misremembering the six-fingered man from Princess Bride.
That is true. And
thinking
then
that Inigo Montoya was Enrico Palazzo.
Yeah, I don't know if that was a death, but I'll take one if you want. It doesn't bother me. I'll double down.
I thought that was the death of which you spoke. So yeah, maybe.
No, I thought Enrico Palazzo had six fingers, Inigo Montoya, but it was the six-fingered man. So that was where the death was in my mind.
Yeah, and then Ben was killed by...
Inconceivable!
Exactly.
Ooh, nice Wallace Shawn, dude. That was tight, man. Oh, and then just to wrap that up, that Ben was killed by Chad in a nug sniping incident.
Yeah,
that will live in infamy.
That's it.
Ratings?
This movie gets a 10.
There you go.
No question about it. It's just everything we already said. It's a cult classic now. The cast is just rich with excellent actors. The writing is fantastic. The directing is fantastic. The cinematography is excellent. The color palette is great. The retro future look, the detail in the movie. I love this movie, and it never really gets old. I definitely feel Ben's kind of tired of dystopia comment for sure, but as a film, this movie it's up there. It's so good. Any science fiction fan or any fan of these sorts of topics, you should watch this movie. That's it.
Bada bing. Bada Ben?
Did you just say bada Ben?
Yeah, is that a death?
Nothing stuck out at me enough to fire up the improbability drive on this one. But I guess I'll just say it's a really good movie. I think it might be a little overrated, but it is really a good movie, despite the fact that I'm kind of not into Yeah, as Kev said, bored of dystopia and the fact that it's a little bit slow paced and I've already seen it. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10.
It's still a great rating.
Yeah, totally reasonable.
No, it's a really good movie. I just think it might be a little overrated by some.
You're dead to me.
And do you think it's overrated, like, looking back at it, or you think it's overrated of the time as well?
Look, people gush about this movie, and, you know, somewhat rightfully so, but
Somewhat
I don't
not.
know that it's worthy of all the praise that it gets.
He's trying to diss me without saying.
No, that's totally reasonable. That's totally reasonable. I kind of felt quite similar, to be honest. Like, going into it, you're like, yeah, it's just pretty good, you know? And then I got through the film. It was like, yeah, it holds up pretty well. And kind of had glimmers of what you were saying of, like, should I heap as much praise on it as I do? Maybe not. And then, like, that layer of my own personal life and, like, the decisions of the last few years with my kids came into it. And it just kind of added a whole new experiential layer onto it for me. So it's, I suppose, like, in a very personal sense, like, the changes in my life have given me an opportunity to experience it in a different way. So I feel like that added to it for me, but that's a very individual thing. So
I like that. That's happened on a lot of films that we've done. Like our opinion when we were younger was one thing, and then it's very different now. Good sometimes and bad sometimes, and I love that.
yeah,
That happens on the show. You know,
and it's part of the reason why I like revisiting books and movies and stuff is because, like, you know, what I might not have understood as a kid reading a really complicated book, I read the book as an adult and, like, you know, whatever book it might be, and you're like, oh, I totally get it now. But as far as this is concerned, it was previously on the algorithm at like a mid-6, so it's out of the 5s already. And then I kind of feel like, for me, it went up a bit as opposed to down a bit. So I'm giving this one
we've got an unprecedented situation here, folks.
We're higher than a 5. I'd be giving it a 7.2.
This is a film that moved up the algorithm. That has literally never happened.
It doesn't happen very often. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
See what I mean? Overrated.
Oh!
Yeah, there you go.
Nice tie-in, man. I like what you did there.
I couldn't quite, like, bring myself to place it above, you know, 12 Monkeys or Moon or those kind of movies. But, yeah, it's in the neighborhood of, like, Red October.
So you don't think it's in the same company as Moon or 12 Monkeys?
They're just above it. And then, like,
Okay.
Red October and Born Identity. Enemy at the Gates is actually below it. So it's in good company.
Interesting.
I think it's a well-crafted film. It's impressive as a debut, even though, like, there's tons of narration in it, which is a bit of a cop-out. Like, the cast and crew did a really good job. And there's not a lot to fault, you know?
No, there's not. And I you know, just as a sidebar, like Andrew Niccol did a ton of commercial work. He was like Ridley Scott. Like he did commercials for like 10 years. Then he started doing films. So like for this, like by the time this guy got to his debut film, he knew what he wanted to do. Like he knew how to dial it in and make it look good. So
knowing
yeah,
what you
it's an
want to do
impressive
and then
debut.
executing on it is kind of a different thing. So it's pretty impressive still.
I agree with you. I'm just saying that definitely lent to the debut being so good. You know, that's all.
So yeah, it's not a 5. There you go.
Nice. Excellent. I'm glad we did this one.
I think your rating was all due to pressure from the Stallones.
You think so?
Fuck, I got to start rating things higher.
I kind of like rating things a 5 because it's like perfectly in line with the Stallones, to be honest.
I like it.
Yeah, I'm just kidding.
I know.
Well, if we go by that, then I'm going to be president, and everybody's going to be drinking barefoot Brunos, and that's going to be mandatory. So we got that to look forward to.
I'm down.
At least the barefoot Brunos.
Bring me the Clamato, dude.
Yeah, baby. I want to give a shout out. I went to have my car serviced yesterday, and one of the gals that was working there proudly displayed on her desk was a very large jar of water it was lighted from underneath, and it had a xenomorph head in it. And I took one look at that, and I was like, that is awesome.
You're my kind of nerd.
I did. I said, you listen to podcasts? And she said, not really. And I said, you're literally my exact demographic. I was like, we do this nerdy kind of podcast. And she got all excited about that. And, as we were talking, she revealed that she was a huge horror movie fan, probably a little bit more than a science fiction fan. But she ran over and grabbed this fantastic, looks like a book, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, but it lights up and it's like a USB light that plugs into your computer. It's so nerdy and so fantastic. And I love that she had two of them and kept one of them at work. And she gave me one of them. And I was so touched by that. So I had to give Sam at the Hyundai dealer a shout out because that was...
Wait, so that's it? I didn't know what the fuck was going on, but it's a book that's got a USB plug on it. I love that she has two, and she keeps one at work.
Two. And keeps
amazing.
one at work, and it was so nerdy. The whole thing was just like so nerd-tastic. I was just overjoyed, and that was right when I got into the dealership. So
right,
it really just set the pace for a really pleasant experience.
well,
so,
nerd high fives.
Thank you, Sam,
madam.
Yeah, nerd high fives. There you go. And that's all I got for shout-outs. Algorithm, what do we got going on next week, dude?
I am pleased to announce that we will be doing Star Trek IV, the whale movie, next week.
Oh, yes.
And if that don't cheer you up, nothing will.
I'm going to record the whole thing speaking into my mouse.
There you go.
Computer.
Beautiful.
How do we know he didn't invent the thing? Anyway, well, there you have it, folks. Join us next week for Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. Arguably one of the best. Thank you for joining us for this week's episode on Gattaca. Hope we didn't melt your brain there in the beginning. And we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Eugene, chef, farewell.
Yew-cheen, chef, farewell.
That's kind of a death, but whatever.
That's all right. And that's going to wrap up this week's episode. If you'd like to check out the show notes for this episode, you can do so in your podcast app of choice or at our website, ebd.fm/episodes/95. If you'd like to support our wonderful show, you could at the very least take the mustache quiz.
Good call.
You can also rate us and review us on iTunes, Stitcher, whatever. You can also support us on Patreon. We have a Patreon now. Patreon.com/EBD podcast.
We like money.
Yeah, we like money. You can also tell a friend to check out the show. Your one friend, everybody's got one friend. I have two. I have
Ben and
Jarhigo and Ben Briere.
I was trying to hold it together. I can't. This is getting too humorous. I have two friends. I have Jarhigo and I have Ben. So, I'm...
I fucking lost.
I'm trying to do
that
this
one.
straight because I think it'll be funny. But folks, thanks so much for joining us for this episode of Gattaca. And stay tuned next week as we tackle something that I already completely forgot.
Star Trek IV, the whale movie.
So long, folks. Sorry, folks. Star Trek IV, the whale movie. And that's going to do it. We'll see you next time, folks.
One for C-Lab, two for Jarhigo, three for Wolverine to round out the trio in this episode. Everybody dies.
You fucking flatfoot.
Beady. Stop into it.